We now return to Illinois Rising, presented by the Illinois Opportunity Project, the radio show discussing honest truth about Illinois policy and politics. Here's AM 560's Dan Proft.
Welcome back to this edition of Rising. Dan and Pat, and corruption and public sector employees living a life that their private sector financiers couldn't imagine is not limited to Chicago Metro. Illinois News Network reporting that over the past 5 years, schools in the Metro East, this is done by St. Louis, paid hundreds of thousands of dollars in penalties for giving teachers in the twilight of their careers improper pension boosting raises, the old pension spiking problem, as if the unfunded liabilities, $130 billion and counting, aren't enough of a problem. According to documents that the INN obtained, Illinois Public Sector the Teachers Retirement Fund has received $527,000 from school districts and communities, middle and frankly struggling communities like East St. Louis, Alton, East Alton, Belleville, and Edwardsville, which is more of a middle-income community, for excessive pay increases and sick leave days. Not a big number in the grand scheme of things, but it's another factor driving property taxes because that's where the preponderance of the financing comes from. And as we know, highest property taxes in the nation, liquidating people's home value and encouraging them, particularly when, say, you're on the border of another state, to skip over to the other side of that border. For more on this topic, we're pleased to be joined by Dwight Kay, who's a state representative candidate in the Metro East area and a former state legislator, three-term state legislator, representing some of those communities as well. Dwight, thanks so much for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Good morning.
So you had some time in the Illinois House, and you're looking to have more time in the Illinois House as a candidate running this fall. For those of us who are sort of obsessed with the property tax issue in Cook and the Collier counties up north, how important is it in your communities in the Metro East?
Well, it's extraordinarily important. One of the recurring themes that you hear as you campaign in this district, whether it's door to door or you go to various events to speak, the number one issue right behind the income tax increase, 32% increase for the ordinary worker in this district, happens to be property taxes. And they go 1-2. It's kind of a shotgun effect. The people are unable to pay the property taxes that are being assessed against them, and it's causing for sale signs to pop up all over Madison County.
Dwight, what's the incentive for these folks to spike these pensions and pay penalties, and then the consequences to raise property tax to their constituents? And how do you, once you're back in office, if you're successful, how do you stop this type of behavior from taking place so we can get to property taxes that are reasonable in your part of the state?
Well, I think, first of all, let's make it very clear that this activity of spiking salaries at the end of a period of time, 25, 30, 35 years, is just unexcusable. It's taking advantage of taxpayers, and I think it's been going on and able to happen for such a long time because people simply didn't understand that was occurring. Well, certainly the districts did, because many of the districts in this area are paying penalties, and I've got the penalties in front of me that these people are paying, but it's not the superintendent that's paying the penalties. It's not the school district that's paying the penalties. It's the taxpayers within these school districts that are paying the penalty. So it starts out very gradually, and hardly anybody knows about it, and pretty soon it escalates into tax increases on property tax bills, which become really unavoidable, and also they are not payable. They can't pay these taxes because they are so burdensome now. Well, and a lot of it has to do with this spiking issue.
Well, in addition to that, too, it's, what am I getting for what I'm paying? And Illinois Policy Institute finds that more than 50% of every additional dollar levied in property taxes over the last 2 decades has gone to pension debt, not services that improve home values or vis-a-vis improving schools or the quality of instruction or the quality of facilities. Half of the increases just to serve pension debt. So your home is collateral for somebody else's pension, and that's not what I think people are thinking when they're paying these property tax bills at the levels you're describing.
Well, that's absolutely correct. I mean, not only is this patently unfair and wrong, but it's making everybody within these school districts renters, because every time your property taxes go up, take a 5 or 10 year period, you can just subtract those amounts that you pay on an annualized basis from your equity. And people are starting to realize that even though they own their home, they're really renters, because they may be paying over a 10-year span of time, they may be paying $100,000 in property tax over a 10-year period. So, people are finally understanding the dilemma that they're in, and they're understanding the problem that's driving the dilemma that we're in here in Madison County, and for that matter, throughout the state. But it's a serious issue, and the further it goes, the harder it gets on taxpayers.
Dwight, your opponent, Representative Stewart, has been in office almost 2 years now. She's running for re-election. What has been her position, and has she done anything to help what is, clearly an existential crisis for the economy of Illinois?
Yeah. Well, Representative Stewart runs like a Republican, runs like a conservative, and she's just the opposite. And I don't think she's going to be able to run on a platform she really doesn't believe in. But that's typical throughout the state, because Democrats have really no very good ideas as to how to fix much of anything. In fact, it's hard to fix things you broke yourself. I just say this with respect to Representative Stewart. She talks about property tax relief. She's been there. She didn't file a bill. She's not a co-sponsor of a bill. So as far as I'm concerned, she is mouthing the words, but she has no plan in place, and really likes property taxes because it goes to her base. She pleads for teachers, pleads for university professors. It's all well and good, but there's no money to pay for these pension hikes or spikes that we see in the last year of someone's pay period.
When you talk to teachers, state workers in your district, particularly against the backdrop of the Janus decision, do you get the sense that there's more willingness to kind of engage constructively, to kind of collaboratively figure out how to address these gaping unfunded pension liabilities?
Well, yes, and I guess to some limited extent I do. I see people talking more about it, but the dynamic I don't think is set in yet from the Janus decision. And here's where I'm going with this. Most people who are on a state-funded pension think that there is a way in Springfield, down in the basement of the Capitol, to print money. Now, they don't say it in those terms, but they feel like this is so secure, that these pension systems are so secure that they'll never lose a penny. And I have to remind them of how this has escalated over the years. 14 different enhancements to the pension system have come about, which in 1970 were really not conceived of. So we've run out of time, we've run out of money, and the question really is, how's this going to move forward? And my answer to them is, think about the prospect of this becoming 25% of the state's budget, or maybe 30% of the state's budget. And what do we do to fund the needy programs within the state, including schools? Because pensions don't go to schools, they go to people.
And the key, one of the key points you made there, you're essentially insinuating, it's a state issue. It's got to be solved at the state level because of all that the state has done to impose mandates at the local level for, in terms of like police and fire pensions, for example. Your mayors and local officials are somewhat handcuffed by the state.
There's no doubt about it. Most people don't know. I visited this issue yesterday with a constituent in Collinsville, which is, of course, maybe not familiar to everyone listening in today, but Collinsville is a middle-class Southern Illinois community in the Metro East. And talking to one of the firefighters in Collinsville, I said, are you aware of the fact that there are 614 communities within the state of Illinois who have intercepts? Well, he didn't even know what an intercept was, and I don't blame him. He really shouldn't be concerned with that. But the bottom line is we have 614 cities and growing where pensions were not properly funded, or they were not funded at the proper percentage over a 180-day period of time. And so the comptroller says, oh, wait a minute, we're going to pay that bill for you. We're going to take care of that for you. Whether she really does that or not, I'm not sure. But I think the reality is that we're borderline crisis number 2. Municipality pensions are at risk. And I think the 614 cities and municipalities throughout the state are proof positive.
He is Dwight Kay, former 3-term state representative, running to be a current state representative, running this fall in the Metro East area state representative candidate, Dwight Kay. Thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you.